When Google first launched the Pixel in late 2016, it immediately competed with phones like the iPhone 7 and the Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge at the time. 2.5 years later, Google is finally launching its mid-range option. The Pixel 3a and 3a XL are Google's cheapest smartphones since the final generation Nexus 5X made by LG. Up until now, the Pixel had only been serving the premium smartphone segment, with the iPhone as its main competitor. Is it safe to say the Pixel 3a XL might be the best Pixel for the price? I'm Ricky with GSM Arena, and this is our review of the Pixel 3a XL. The Pixel 3a is Google's answer to the mid-range phone. Unlike Nexus devices that try to maximize value around a high-end chipset, the Pixel 3a has a mid-range chipset and keeps as many features of the more expensive Pixel 3 without compromising the Pixel experience that many Android purists love. In more recent years, bezels have pretty much gone away as phone makers move towards near bezel-less displays, so some might say this design is a bit outdated. But honestly, I didn't mind the bezels. Sure, the bottom bezel and navigation bar add a lot of space under the keyboard, but it forces you to hold the phone a bit higher when typing, which I find more comfortable. And you have a better balance on the phone versus typing so close to the bottom edge. The phone itself is comfortable to hold, thanks to the rounded body that's actually made of plastic. Google even emulated the same soft touch glass on the Pixel 3, using this polycarbonate material. At first glance, anyone could easily mistake this for glass, but keep in mind that plastic is indeed more prone to scratching. This is the purplish Pixel 3a XL, and I really like the color. It's a very subtle and pale purple that reminds me of the color that milk turns after having marshmallow cereal. I love how the neon green power key drastically contrasts the color of the phone. The overall look and feel of the Pixel 3a is very similar to the Pixel 2, and they're also about the same size. They both have 6-inch displays and generously sized bezels with rounded corners around the frame and display. This is a 6-inch OLED screen with full HD resolution. It renders colors very well, and there's no drastic color shifting. It doesn't offer any advanced color tuning options, but you do get 3 color profiles to choose from. The default setting is adaptive, and if that's a bit too saturated for your taste, you can go with the boosted option. Then there's natural, for those who'd rather work with more accurate colors. This display does get plenty bright. We tested a max brightness of about 450 nits, but there was no brightness boost past that. Sunlight legibility is otherwise not bad. Even with polarized sunglasses, I could still see the display in both portrait and landscape orientations. The Pixel 3a sees the return of the headphone jack, which we've pretty much seen disappear from the most expensive phones, but it still hangs around for entry and mid-level smartphones. Audio quality was very good, excellent loudness both with and without headphones. Clarity is perfect with an active amplifier and very solid with headphones too. On the audio front, the Pixel 3a XL does have dual loudspeakers, and they are amply loud for alerts and ringtones, but the speakers are lacking in some fullness in sound, which resulted in tinnier sounds at high volumes. Of course, we can't complain since many phones in this price range don't even offer stereo speakers. After all, it's nice to have the larger bezels so you have a comfortable place to hold the phone while playing games or watching videos. And even if it's just one front-facing speaker, it's nice to have sound coming towards you when consuming content. Thanks to a combination of a power-efficient OLED display, a 3700 mAh battery, and the power-efficient Snapdragon 670 processor, the Pixel 3a XL yielded an impressive 98 hours of endurance in our testing. In real life, you can expect the Pixel 3a XL to last you a whole day off the charger, and sometimes into part of the next day before you need to juice it back up. The phone comes with an 18-watt USB-C power delivery charger, and Google is one of the few OEMs who include a true USB-C charger in the box. Although this phone runs a mid-range Snapdragon 670 CPU, the overall performance is very responsive. Day-to-day tasks like messaging, taking calls, and casual gaming is no challenge for this phone. I consider myself a power user, and I find that some phones just can't keep up with my usage, but I never felt that way about the Pixel 3a. It was able to do everything I wanted with little to no hesitation. The phone does have its moments when it slows down after you really push it with applications, multitasking with games and social media, but for the casual everyday user, anything you throw at this, it will handle with no problems. The 3a XL comes with Android Pie out of the box, and the interface is clean and very much centered around Google services. Google even managed to get Active Edge on both the 3a and 3a XL. Pressure sensors embedded in the frame can be triggered so you can easily talk to Google Assistant. And although at first it feels silly to squeeze the phone, it eventually becomes a convenient way to set reminders and control smart home stuff. The software is otherwise exactly what you'd expect from the Pixel. You'll be first in line for major software updates from Google, and you'll get all of Android's built-in features like digital well-being for limiting your screen time, adaptive battery for maximizing battery life, and the Pixel Launcher with quick access to your Google feed. The Pixel's gesture navigation pill isn't my favorite, and there's not even an option to bring back the traditional 3-key navbar. Android Q beta builds have shown the old navbar make a comeback, so we're hoping to see the option return with the final release of Android Q. Otherwise, the Pixel isn't terrible once you get used to it. Overall, I like the software experience on this Pixel. I found that the mid-range chipset didn't actually hurt the snappiness or fluidity of the UI. But 4GB of RAM is starting to show its age, especially now with many Chinese mid-rangers starting at 6GB. The Pixel 3a XL has an identical rear camera to the Pixel 3. There's a 12.2 megapixel camera with an f1.8 aperture lens, and the camera is also optically and electronically stabilized for video. Refocusing is quick thanks to dual pixel autofocus. The front-facing camera, on the other hand, is not the same one from the Pixel. Aside from there being no secondary wide selfie camera, it has a slower f2.0 aperture, and it has a slightly wider field of view. This Pixel uses Google's HDR+ algorithm, which is how photos get those vibrant colors and punchy contrasts. This Pixel doesn't have the Pixel Core hardware, so photos will take a lot longer to process, and if you go ham on the shutter button, you'll sometimes be waiting up to a couple of minutes before the pictures start populating the camera roll. If you've never used a camera on a Pixel before, there's only one thing you really need to know. There are no manual controls. But there is a basic white balance selector and a manual exposure slider. But for the average person taking photos, this is just fine. The UI is simple and doesn't offer a huge list of fancy shooting modes. You can swipe between camera modes or tap more to see all the available modes and settings. The Pixel 3a XL takes photos just as good as the Pixel 3. Images are well balanced between detail and sharpness, highlight retention is very good, and colors are well reproduced. The camera tends to shoot a bit cooler than true life, which has always been the case with Pixel phones. The camera also tends to slightly underexpose images, which contributes to that contrasty feel that makes the photos look more pleasant than real life. The camera also does well in lower light situations. Image stacking with HDR+ helps to reduce noise and produce a cleaner image with more exposures to work with. For those situations with even less available light, there's Google's Night Sight. It's designed to work handheld, so you don't need a tripod, and the results are impressive. Unlike other super low light camera modes, Night Sight doesn't exaggerate the exposure of the shadows, which makes these photos look much more realistic than some other night modes from other OEMs. Google's Super Res Zoom even works here and lets you zoom in up to 10 times to take pictures from far away. It works very well for 2 times and maybe even 3 times zoom photos, but anything more than that and you can kind of tell that it's cropped. Even though Pixels only have a single camera, they can still take very nice portrait shots with believable subject separation. The frame does crop in a bit, forcing you to take a few steps back to fit your subject in the viewfinder. The bokeh is applied pretty strong, but you can always pull it back if it's too much. Unlike the rear camera, the Pixel 3a's 8-megapixel front camera is noticeably inferior to that of the regular Pixel 3. HDR Plus does a good enough job when there's a lot of light, but the image quality of indoor and lower light selfies does take a noticeable hit. The front-facing camera can snap portraits, and they look good, but they won't look as good as the main cameras. There is night sight on the front camera too, and this might be the selfie camera's saving grace for getting those group selfies in tougher lighting as long as your friends manage to stay still for a few seconds. The Pixel 3a XL records 4K video at 30 frames per second or 1080p video at up to 60 frames per second. 4K video looks great, detailed with vibrant colors and good dynamic range. Videos shot in either 1080 or 4K are both optically and electronically stabilized. 1080p videos look just as good as 4K, so if you don't need the highest resolution video available, this should be enough. 60-frame 1080p video, however, is noticeably worse, and we think it's actually capturing in 720p and upscaling to 1080p, so we'd avoid using this mode altogether. Strangely enough, there was no problem shooting 120 frames slow motion at 1080p. The phone also supports 240 frames at 720p. A mid-range chipset, a 6-inch screen with large bezels, and a plastic body. On paper, these things don't sound very appealing, but practically speaking, the Pixel 3a XL is the best light version of the Pixel 3 XL at a little over half the cost. You do miss out on some things like wireless charging, water resistance, and the secondary selfie camera, but you get pretty much everything else that the Pixel 3 has to offer. Nice looking hardware, active edge, the Pixel 3 XL's main camera, which is really good, and an AMOLED screen, which is great for this price range. Not to mention, battery life is really good and performance is way better than I expected it to be. The Pixel 3a is important for Google because it expands on the Pixel offering and caters to the mid-range market to make the Pixel experience more accessible to people who couldn't really afford the more expensive Pixel phones. And it does that without watering down the overall experience. So that gets a 2 thumbs up recommendation from me. So that's it. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already done so, go ahead and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more videos like this one. Go ahead and leave your comments down below on what you think of the 3A or the 3A XL, and tell us what your favorite color is. With that, I'm Ricky, signing off for GSM Marina. Thank you guys for watching.